The full podcast will be shown in the link in the description below. So, Martin, here's a question for you. Well, I don't know if it's a question, but it's a thought to ponder. Okay. If alien technology does exist and is being held by the US government, as lots of conspiracy theorists point out, surely it's now the worst kept secret in history. We've had Roswell, we've had Area 51, flashing lights, little green men, abductions, animal mutilations, Shag Harbor. All of these stories are fed to us through the pop culture mill to the point of exhaustion. You know, even the supposed enforcers of this secret, the Men in Black, have their own movie franchise, you know? But what if there's a kernel of truth to these outlandish theories, Martin?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, they can only ever be recorded on a potato, no matter how good technology gets. It's a potato or nothing.
Exactly.
A potato or nothing.
But what if the US military isn't covering up alien technology, but they are covering up the truth of just how advanced the technology at their disposal truly is? And how do we know that they could be doing this, Martin? Because they've already done it before. Back in the early 80s, a trained disinformant called Richard Doty worked for the US government and spoke to witnesses of advanced aerial vehicles, like prototypes that the US military were working on, and encouraged them to believe that what they'd seen was of alien origins, when in actuality, they were just prototypes. Also, to support this, the US government denied the existence of Area 51 all the way up to 2013, when the CIA publicly acknowledged the base's existence for the first time. So this was... I mean, it was kind of common knowledge that it existed before this point from like satellite imagery, but this was how far the US military went to deny its existence. So bearing all this in mind, Martin, along with the fact that the US military receives more funding than the next 10 countries combined, approximately $778 billion in 2020, the question remains, what secret hidden technology do they have behind closed doors?
It is crazy. I think what makes us even more intrigued and perhaps more skeptical is the fact that they have been creating what is essentially, incredible advancements in technology. And these are DARPA is made up of some of the most intelligent geniuses in the country. And so some of the stuff that they've already made that isn't classified has been so amazing that it makes you think it's not a huge leap to think, okay, what could they be creating beyond this? I mean, just looking at some of the stuff they've managed to create, like synthetic blood is one, mind-controlled artificial arms is another one. There's, of course, just these amazing technologies that have been created. So the question is, what beyond that is being made?
Yeah, because that's the thing. Those are just what we know, what we've heard about.
Yeah.
But for those of you that don't know what DARPA is and why we're specifically singling them out, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, it's a research and development agency of the United States Department of Defense responsible for the development of emerging technologies for use by the military. So it's very much the kind of agency that's responsible for looking at the feasibility and viability of these kind of technologies. And they've got their so many fingers in all sorts of pies, Martin. They've got research ongoing in different areas, and there are several like major projects that we'll probably mention that mysteriously kind of shut down, or either they decided, oh no, it's not worth the effort, or they really made a breakthrough and suddenly they don't want to talk about it in public anymore. They want to keep it hidden behind closed doors.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that really strikes me from the off is the fact that I imagine they're working on hundreds of different projects, or have worked on hundreds of different projects, but so many of these are either quite widely known about or are a not very well kept secret.
Yeah.
And as you say, if there's a huge breakthrough in actually, the creation of, say, robot insects, which is one thing they've been working on, led to the creation of a particular weapon that they wanted to use in warfare that was, more secret and covert. It's like, at what stage do you stop talking about the robot insects because you don't want your further research to get out, right? So
yeah. Just to put to perspective, how many different varying things DARPA works on. Yeah, synthetic blood, robot insects. 2, what someone's already mentioned in the comments and I want to speak about, Harp, weather control technology. Oh my God, YouTube's really not going to like this one, is it? We're saying all the keywords.
No. I can see it's already been. I looked on the dashboard, and it's already been flagged as having limited advertising.
Oh, okay.
So just interesting. Patreon.com/just interesting. There we go. COVID-19 as well. With the vaccines, they experimented with different aerosol treatments, I believe, as well. That was another thing that they were looking into. So it's not just, fantastical stuff. It's real life, real world application.
So shall we speak about one of these in particular and speculate wildly about whether they've developed it? The one that we've spoken about before that I feel like deserves more of a mention is Project Harp, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. This has had numerous conspiracy theories surrounding it over the years, including Hugo Chavez, who said that it was responsible for the Haiti earthquake, I think, in 2010. This is a research project set up in Alaska with the aim of studying the ionosphere, because I think they set it up here because that's where you see the, what they call the green lights in the sky, Aurora Borealis.
Yes, Aurora Borealis.
You see them a lot, and they wanted to study like sending radio waves into it or something like that. But there's a lot of conspiracy theory surrounding it, saying that they are actually controlling the weather with this technology. The US Air Force noted Congress that they were going to shut down Harp in 2014. And obviously this is a recurring pattern that you see with DARPA-related projects, which Harp was. DARPA invested in Harp. Yeah, jointly funded by the US Air Force, the US Navy, the University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Alaska, wasn't it? Yeah.
And the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA. Yeah, what do you think, Martin? Do you think they shut this down just because they got everything they needed from it? Or do you think it was because they uncovered weather control technology?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the idea that there were some environmental issues, weren't there? That they were worried about it, affecting like the local climates and stuff. So they didn't want to do that because. But of course, there's a lot of theories about what it could cause as well: like floods, hurricanes, droughts, and earthquakes, as you say. So, I mean, what would be the benefit of closing this down? Is it too expensive, or has the funding gone, or do they want to divert that into something else? Well, you look at how much funding they have, the US military spending budget, and you're like, well, money is probably not an issue, and it's pretty much a blank check when it comes to DARPA, and they basically have a pool of funds that could be used for whatever they like. So I'd say that on a financial front, there's no reason to shut this down. Could they have uncovered something that has other, more deadly applications, like being able to cause floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, etc.? And that's the reason why they wanted to keep it under wraps, because if other militaries get a hold of this technology, then it could be catastrophic, and perhaps that's the case. You've got to think about why they'd want to shut this down and why they'd want to keep it going. And from the monetary point of view, there's no reason for them to shut this down. I don't know. My gut feeling is that it's still going in some capacity, but it's probably been scaled back. But we haven't heard much about it, and that's the thing. Like nowadays, as we've seen with the announcement that UFOs exist. Do you remember that? It was almost a couple of years ago now. That was a pretty amazing announcement. The US government and other governments around the world just declaring that UFOs actually exist now, something that they would never have said previously. Certainly not before the declaration that Area 51 exists. So you think that something might have come out about Harp. I think they allow people to still go around the university facility.
I think they're quite open about it. Yeah, they give tours and stuff.
So the question is the research being conducted elsewhere? Have they just moved their sites and continued, stage 11 of the research?
I mean, honestly, it may be a little bit of a comfort if everything with climate change is going to start ramping up, that we could just change the weather at will. That'd be lovely. There's certainly very little evidence that this has been used or weaponized at the moment that I can find anyway. It's basically wild speculation. I don't think there's any actual direct evidence to suggest that this is in operation and causing widespread famine around the world. But hey, if anyone in the comments can prove me wrong, I'd be keen to hear what you've got.
I mean, the other issue that definitely comes up about a lot of the scientific conspiracy theories that come up is that something like Harp, of course, is run by dozens, if not hundreds, of geniuses who know all about this technology and know about the science behind it. And trying to explain what's going on in a study like that to your layman on the street, let alone someone who, who's relatively intelligent, is almost impossible. Yeah. So if you can't explain it, there's automatically no transparency or very limited transparency. So you can't explain science to someone. So it's like, well, they're trying to hide it from us. It's like, no, it take like 6 months to even try and explain it to you, and then you wouldn't understand it anyway. With a lot of these, it's just, there's a lack of understanding that usually forms the conspiracy as opposed to being anything else.
I think they actually responded to the conspiracy theories by saying we're studying the ionosphere, which doesn't have or has very little to do with the weather systems on Earth. So yeah, I think it's kind of a lack of understanding on people's parts, maybe. But then, I mean, it's easy to just say as a conspiracy theorist, well, I mean, you're not investigating the ionosphere then. That's just a front. That's just a cover. Mm. But again, there's very little evidence to suggest that what they're doing isn't legit. So what other ones do you think they have? One
of the things that comes up is rail guns often comes up, doesn't it?
Yeah,
they're working on rail guns. With Russia working on their missiles that can go at the speed of sound, isn't it?
They've got Russia's recently, I think, in Ukraine used a hypersonic missile, which I think is 5 times the speed of sound. So that's and the speed of sound, if I'm not mistaken, is around 750 miles an hour.
Yeah,
around that. So like around 3,000 miles per hour or 3,500 miles per hour we're talking about.
And isn't the theory is that they're working on railguns that could be up to 7 times the speed of sound? So a much more advanced technology than even the Russians, but it hasn't been confirmed that this is the case, or it's still undercover, under wraps. So, of course, it'd be an extremely disruptive weapon.
Yeah, so interestingly, this is on DARPA's website. This isn't a conspiracy theory, but they had a hypersonic missile test last week. So this was on the 5th of April. They made this announcement. They had a second successful flight for DARPA hypersonic air-breathing weapon concept, HAWK. They love their acronyms, don't they? Do you think they come up with the acronym before they come up with
almost
what it's actually called?
Mm.
And this is a hypersonic weapon similar to what Russia just used in Ukraine, allegedly, but it's air breathing. So I think unlike that one, which just uses kind of rocket fuel to get to its target, I think this one, because it utilizes the air like a plane, like a jet engine, it can travel far greater distances and still at the hypersonic speeds. Yeah. And this is the thing. This is them talking about these tests last week. So I wonder how far advanced are they that this is what they're announcing publicly. And I guess they're announcing this publicly in order to because surely they've got to balance it with what we're keeping secret so our enemies don't know about it, what we're working on, compared with what we want to showcase to show our enemies, hey, don't mess with us.
That's it, isn't it? This seems like a very political statement, doesn't it? It's like, okay, but you've created this, look what we're creating. It's very much a one-upmanship, isn't it? Like in the Cold War, you're very much showing off your military capabilities and the research you're working on. So yeah, that's it'd be interesting to see, but it seems quite political when they announce what they've been working on. Like, we've been working on potential things to help the coronavirus pandemic. We're working on something that's actually better than what the Russians have been using. They're political hot topics a lot of the time, what they're announcing.
I've got one. Have you ever heard of Project 1794?
1794, bloody good year. No, I don't know. No, I haven't actually. No.
So this was a project in the 1950s, a military venture called Project 1794, which aimed to build a supersonic flying saucer. And you can search this. Declassified materials showed the US Air Force had a contract with a Canadian company to build a flying saucer. And there are demos of this that you can see online of a disc-shaped craft flying about. It looks pretty wobbly. It looks pretty unstable. But the original plan was for this to reach a top speed of between Mach 3 and Mach 4 and have a ceiling of over 100,000 feet and a maximum range with allowances of about 1,000 nautical miles. So they got to the pre-prototype testing stage. And this was in 1956. So this was, nearly 70 years ago now?
Yeah.
Which is mad when you think about it. And this project was eventually shut down, apparently, because the craft was apparently unstable. It just wasn't working out. However, this declassified document hints that the product development seemed to be going better than planned, saying the present design will provide a much superior performance to that estimated at the start of contract negotiations. So it begs the question, why was the project dropped? Why aren't wars being fought with flying saucers, Martin? Interestingly, the cost of continuing the prototype was estimated at $3,168,000. Which,
in their money back then.
In the money back then, which in today's money translates to about $26 million.
It's not crazy, is it?
Well, given that the US has a military budget of above $750 billion, there's nothing. There's literally nothing. So the question is, why did they stop investigating this? And then I would put forward to you, what if they didn't stop creating this project? Yeah. What if these UFO sightings that have been confirmed in the last couple of years, YouTube is really not going to like me after saying all this. But the Tic Tac UFO and a couple of military UFO sightings. What if that wasn't, random military people coming forward and talking about it, but maybe that was a planned statement by the US military to kind of say, look what we've got. Look what we've got to their rivals.
When did this finish? When do you say it finished? Supposedly?
It finished in 1960. That's when the military finally pulled the plug.
I mean, to be a skeptic,
please do.
It was in the 70s where they started coming up with the concept for the stealth aircraft and stealth bombers. Maybe they just realized that a UFO shaped cylindrical type aircraft just wasn't as viable. It wasn't as quick. It wasn't as aerodynamic. It wasn't as good.
Yeah,
as something more stealthy.
It's very true. No.
Shit.
This is not aerodynamic at all, guys. This is a waste of energy. It's terrible design. I mean, it goes against all kind of principles of aerodynamics, I think. Not that I know those principles. I'm not aeronautical engineer.
I was thinking about that when saying about Harp as well. I was like, it's just the science is just really complicated, and just for layman's people just don't understand it, including us.
I'm more than confident enough to express my ignorance on the topic. Yeah, absolutely. But it's I find it interesting though, all those actual, flying saucer UFO sightings that you hear about. Maybe this could be it. I mean, you've got those. There's all those UFO sightings that people see of triangular shaped or arrowhead UFO sightings. And that's just a stealth bomber. They've just seen a stealth bomber, right? If you look at a stealth bomber in the sky and you didn't know what a stealth bomber was, I'd be like, that's a UFO. That's an alien spacecraft I've just seen. It's literally a triangle arrowhead. That's got to be what people have seen.
I mean, imagine a few years ago, say 20 years ago, seeing a drone in the sky as well. Or maybe 30 years ago, seeing a drone and just being like, what on earth is that? It looks like some kind of bug. Unless you're in the know, you'd be like, that's not a standard aircraft. That's not something that's used commercially. Yeah, I mean, the technology always is moving so fast, isn't it? That something that we see as so regular and normal it's just so out there a few years back.
So, yeah, I mean, I feel like those recent military UFO sightings, maybe those are a good place to end on, but what do you guys think in the comments? And Martin, do you think that is an extraterrestrial of some kind? Because I've always thought it seems like maybe it's just some kind of incredibly advanced military technology that we just don't know about.
It's likely to be advanced military technology, and part of it is that we do know now that, as you say, that the intelligence services and the US military have in the past wanted people to believe in UFOs to cover up their actual military secrets and military sightings. The reason being that you can always dismiss someone who says they've seen a UFO, whereas if you've seen something that's actually a real US military aircraft, that's much more valuable to them than someone saying they've seen a UFO. So it seems likely that they have seen some military aircraft. But at the same time, I mean, the opposite of that is that, you know, it could almost be a double bluff. It's like, okay, well, we can't let people know that they've actually seen an alien, so we'll say that it's people to say they've seen an alien, and then people will call them idiots and say, no, it's got to be a US military aircraft. But actually, the US government doesn't know what it is. It is truly an unidentified flying object. So perhaps that does suggest alien life. But of course, it still has to be recorded on a potato, regardless of what you see.
And that's the US military as well. Come on, guys. Come on.
Always come back to the potato. So have I sat on the fence there? Probably. But yeah.
It's an interesting one, Martin. But I'd be interested to hear what people think about this one in the comments.